Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a look at my new pressure washer, the AR630 Plus, as well as a brief look at the new AR591 Plus and the AR680 offerings.
You shall not pass.
Annovi Reverberi, or AR, makes a plethora of pressure washers from entry-level to top-tier pro and commercial units, not to mention vacuums, extractors, water pumps and other related equipment, and have been doing so for many decades. But what can make things a little confusing is that even when looking at these three specific higher-end, detailer-focused units, like the AR630, 680 and 591, there's also different models and spec offerings available for each of these units. So just to be clear, the main unit I'll be discussing and the one I'm upgrading to at home is the all-new 2025 AR630 Plus, which is an upgrade from the standard or previous 630, and the same goes for the new AR591 Plus, which is quite a significant upgrade to the standard 591. So it's important to understand that there may be different performance and spec variations within the same model number, and that different countries may have different specs of the same model available. So my advice is do a little research and talk to your local distributor prior to purchase, as there can be some online conflicting information. Now I've selected these three specific units because I've personally used all of them and was fortunate enough to get my hands on some pre-delivery units earlier this year, so I've had quite a bit of time with them, not to mention I've also had the older AR models in the shop for several years now. So what I can say is that I've been extremely impressed with not only the performance, but also the reliability, build quality and affordability that in my opinion makes them a standout and very appealing option for both car detailing enthusiasts and professionals looking for a solid long-term pressure washer unit, hence this video, which is long overdue. Before installing my new AR630 Plus, I took some footage of it all nice, new and clean, so you guys could have a look at it up close, and I'll go through some of the specs, features and options, and then switch to some footage of installing and running the unit. As far as setup goes, there's not a lot to do once you get the unit, as it already comes filled with oil. All you need to do is replace the shipping oil cap with the dipstick, screw on the quick connector inlet filter, and outlet pressure hose, and there's a power cable hanging bracket you can also choose to fit on. I'll have links to all the units in the description box, so if you want more in-depth specs and stats, feel free to go to the websites and have a look. But I'll try and cover the main specs of the 630 Plus here, and I'll talk more about the 680 and 591 Plus a little later in the video for those of you considering more affordable options. So as far as AR car detailing pressure washers are concerned, the new 630 Plus is the top tier flagship option, currently selling for about 1450 AUD, though can retail for up to 1700, and I think a similar 630 in the States goes for about 900 to 1000 USD, and it's backed with a 3-year warranty here locally. There's an all-new 2025 generation industrial XXX all-brass pump, which is a fully rebuildable unit, has upgraded ceramic plungers featuring long strokes and a more advanced crankcase. Perhaps the most important feature of this unit is the low revving 1450 RPM brushless motor that runs cooler and quieter than most typical high revving units, but without compromising performance. It has a total stop or constant running operation, easy oil level and clear inspection window, adjustable pressure washer and PSI gauge, a powerful motor, rock solid construction and premium materials, coming in at a hefty 26 kilograms, and it's all made in-house in Italy. It's rated at a max 1885 PSI and 1550 working PSI, with a max water flow of 10.5 litres per minute. In a nutshell, what this all means is a serious and premium built unit with better cooling, oiling, easier service, high performance, long-term reliability for professional use, and I think a handsome looking unit that anyone would be happy to place at the center of their pressure washing setup. Now, I've discussed in the past how pressure washer stats in terms of PSI and LPM or liters per minute flow can be misleading, as in the real world you just won't achieve those performance claims in a typical setup scenario or simultaneously. But without getting too technical here, brands will use overly small pressure washer tip orifices to boost pressure ratings that will drastically reduce water flow, and then switch to overly large orifices to boost water flow ratings that drastically reduce pressure, neither of which you'd typically use, but allow the brands to claim high specs, though misleading. There's also a big difference in max pressure versus working pressure, which is similar to engine horsepower versus actual wheel horsepower. And it's important to note that some brands are more realistic and honest about these claims than others. The AR630 Plus claims of 1550 working PSI and a 10 litre LPM water flow are certainly achievable based on my first-hand testing with PSI and separate water flow meters, and I'll also add here that in my experience, Kranzel is another pressure washer brand that's also more honest with their stats. With that said, the thing to understand is that if you're going to use nozzles with smaller 2 to 3 millimeter orifices and turn the pressure washer knob to max pressure, you will get up to that 1550 psi. It may drop down to 7 or 8 liters of LPM. And if you use 5 millimeter or larger orifices, I have seen the unit get over 10 liters per minute, but the pressure may drop to 1000 psi or even lower. So you can decide how you wish to go with the orifice sizes of your nozzles to tune the PSI and LPM balance, but my suggestion based on my own testing is don't go too small, as I think it stresses the unit and there's absolutely no need for much over 1000 PSI for car detailing, whereas better water flow should be the goal. So my favorite orifice sizes were either the 5 or 4.5 millimeters, that with this unit still produces more than ample pressure, but more importantly a good 9 LPM of water flow and above. I think the 4mm orifice is still fine to use if you want a bit more pressure at a slightly lower LPM water flow, but I don't recommend going any smaller than a 4mm orifice for the 630 Plus, as to me it was just too much pressure and a needless sacrifice in water flow. The last thing to add here is that I also think that the white 40-degree tips with the 630 Plus will be more than adequate with this powerful unit, but you can also use the green 25 angle tips for some more heavy-duty car cleaning, but never use the 15-degree tips and certainly not the red ones. Those should only be used for hard surfaces like cleaning driveways, walls, certain parts, and so forth. There's a few great videos on the AR630 units where real-world PSI and LPM are put to the test, which could be good to check out. But keep in mind that I'm not entirely sure they are the exact same unit as this 630 Plus, and that there's many different factors that can affect a pressure washer's performance. When I tested this unit at work, I was actually getting up to 10.2 liters per minute with a 5mm orifice and even higher PSI readings. Whereas here at home, although I got very close at 9.6 liters per minute, I couldn't quite manage those same stats. So just be aware that things like home versus industrial power setups, and in my case, water tank and DI filtration system variables, not to mention things like water quality, altitude, colder climates, the length, diameter, and quality of the hoses can be a big one, and good nozzle tips that are true to spec and not old or clogged are a must. Also, try to avoid extension cords and power boards, as I did find they can starve the unit of the full power it requires. That's why to me, although stats, specs, and reviews are helpful, I'm always more interested in how products perform for me personally, and what I can tell you is that although there can be variations, at no point using the 630 Plus over the last few months did I ever feel like I was needing more flow or pressure when it was set up and used correctly. This has, without a doubt, an abundance of both. Another thing to mention is the great feature in the total stop system, or the TSS. So you may think that most pressure washers have total stop, as when you press the trigger they start, and when you release the trigger they stop, which is correct. However, what 99% of pressure washers do is essentially resort to a kill switch rather than a true total stop. What this means is that when the power is cut to these units, they just stop without releasing the built-up pressure that can drastically reduce the life of the units, as it does put it under severe stress, increased heat, and creates violent pressure releases once it fires back up. Whereas with a true total stop, when the unit stops, it also releases the pressure and the stress on the unit, and when it starts up again, it instantly builds it back up. So the unit is never under severe pressure, which will result in a longer lifespan. Now, as with most pressure washers, you can opt for buying just the standard unit on its own with the AR hoses, lance, and triggers. But as this standard kit, let's be honest, always sucks on every pressure washer out there, and since you can usually save quite a bit of money on upgrading as a kit compared to buying the upgrades separately, it could be worth pricing this into your pressure washer budget. But whichever way you go, my advice is to replace the standard kit with a quick disconnect setup, get yourself a better short swivel trigger, removable extension lens, interchangeable nozzle tips, and a longer quality hose. This is always the first thing I do when getting a new pressure washer, as it really does make all the difference. The other option to consider, being that this unit weighs a hefty 26 kilograms, is to get either the trolley if you intend on moving it around, or get the wall mounting kit if you want a fixed installation. I actually got the wall mount bracket, but retrofitted it to my own detailing cart. Now, a couple of other tips I would offer with the 630 Plus is to do away with the plastic filter quick connect inlet, which I personally found is restrictive with its tiny 9mm opening, and use a larger quick connect made for 3/4 inch hoses that will almost double the diameter for better, less restrictive flow, and go for the brass one, as these plastic ones always tend to break. Now, it's not like the standard one can't work fine, but I actually saw about a ½ litre per minute increase in water flow by doing this, but that could also be because I'm running a DI system and using my water tanks that's potentially restricting flow. In any case, it did help with my specific setup, but may have no impact on yours. The second tip would be to use a larger inline hose filter like this one that won't restrict flow or clog up as quickly. Now, with my DI water unit and cleaned filtered rainwater, it's not like I need this extra filter, but just in case a piece of DI sand or something else makes it through, I think it's worth having that extra layer of protection on an expensive bit of kit like this. The last tip I would offer was to stay on top of the oil change. The oil needs to be changed at the first 50 hours of use with a SAE 20 grade, but after that it's only every 200 hours or once a year, whatever comes first. A great little device to keep track of hours is a vibration triggered hour meter such as this that will automatically count hours of use, and you can even program it to remind you when you need to service the unit. I'm still waiting for both the inline filter and hour meter to arrive, but once they get here, I'll fit them on. The last bit of advice I'll give is to look after your unit. Some of you may know that I did move to a larger country property about 5 years ago, and since then I've had to invest in quite a bit of equipment, from mowers to trimmers, generators, chippers, pumps, compressors, and so forth. And what I've found is that if nothing else, just making sure you use a quality oil and change it regularly is like 80% of ensuring that engines and pumps run well and have long lives. So I've started to invest in these little spark hour meters for my combustion engines and vibration hour meters for my electric motors and pumps that are cheap but extremely helpful in keeping track of hours used and maintenance intervals. Also, try to slowly break in new equipment, which means don't fire it up for the first time and run it for an hour straight. New small engines, motors and pumps need to settle in, so run it in for a short period, stop, let it cool all the way down, and then repeat the process a couple more times till it all settles in. This equipment isn't cheap, so my advice is look after it and it'll do right by you. Now some of you may have seen the video I did on this detailing cart, but I'll add a link to that video in the description box. But all I really did here with the new 630 Plus is swap it out for my baby Kranzel KHD7 and use the wall mounting system on the backboard of the cart to mount the hose reel, which is going to be much nicer than using a hook to gather up the 15 meters of pressure hose. Now because the cart is back heavy with the DI water filtration system, I need the 630 Plus to be all the way up front to balance the weight, and the reel had to be all the way back to mount it to the backing board, which was an issue as the connecting hose lead was too short. But as the name suggests, this is retrofitting, so I made it work. It just took about 10 times longer than estimated, but what else is new? I also had to reconfigure a few other things to fit around the 630's design compared to the Kranzel, and will most likely adjust and tidy up a few more things when I get time. Maybe also mount a larger plywood shelf onto the hose reel plate to use as a bench space, but for now, it'll do. Now you may be asking, why even upgrade to the 630 Plus when I already have a great pressure washer in the Kranzel KHD7, which is a fair question. The real answer is the increased water flow. The thing is that for safe, efficient and effective car washing, we really don't need all that much pressure, and if you do want increased pressure, let's say for doing underbody cleaning, or even like I do, using my pressure washer a couple of times a year to clean the outside pavers, concrete, windows and walls, it's very easy to increase the pressure by swapping out nozzles with finer orifices and or smaller degree spray pattern nozzles, not to mention using a turbo nozzle. But when a pressure washer has a lower max LPM water flow, there's really nothing you can do to increase that maximum flow. And in my experience, water flow is by far the more impactful performance characteristic that leads to more efficient and effective results. Now the Kranzel KHD7 still has quite a good and honestly rated 6 to 7 litre LPM water flow using 5mm orifices, and it's been a fantastic and reliable unit for the past 4 years I've had it. But compared to the Kranzel 2160 TST that I've had on the shop going almost 8 years now, that's rated at 11 litres per minute, but I've tested it closer to 10, it's just not in the same league in terms of how quickly and efficiently it cleans. I'd say almost twice as fast at removing road films and heavy dirt and grime, not to mention that rinsing down in multiple step decontamination processes is just far quicker. And believe it or not, both the baby KHD7 and the larger 2160 have same PSI or pressure ratings, with the only real difference between them being the LPM or increased water flow of the 2160 that just makes it a far more efficient pressure washer to work with. I can also add that when it comes to cleaning my outdoor paths, walls and windows, both the 2160 and the AR630 Plus have saved me several hours over the course of a day or two compared to using the KHD7. So just to be clear, it's not like the baby Kranzel can't do just as good of a job. It's all about the larger Kranzel and the AR630 Plus allowing me to power through at a faster rate, which can save me hours of time over the days and weeks, and dozens of hours, if not more, over the months and years.
I still dream about you every night. Guess I'm wondering if you're alright. I wish I didn't do.
Now, I would have quite easily chosen the 2160 to replace the KHD7 at home if it firstly was available to me in a unit-only configuration that would fit into my detailing cart. But secondly, and more importantly, when I first got the 2160 8 years ago, I think it was about $2,400 or $2,500, whereas now it's over $3,100. I mean, even the KHD7, which I think cost about $1,300 4 years ago, is now going over $1,800, which is kind of crazy for what it is. So don't get me wrong, I do love the Kranzel pressure washers and can attest to their performance and reliability, but I just can't be on board paying that much when there's a comparatively reliable and high-performing options at less than half the price when comparing apples to apples. So this AR630 Plus, currently selling for about 1450 AUD, has very similar specs to the Kranzel 21600, selling at more than twice the price. And what I can add after having both units in the wash bay at work is that I really couldn't see a difference in performance when toggling from one machine to the other. The water flow, the pressure, the noise, the foam quality out of the cannons and so forth are give or take on the same level across the board. But I guess the more interesting and, let's say, more relevant comparison as far as price goes would be comparing the Kranzel KHD7 that currently costs over $1,800 to this AR630 Plus, and in that scenario, there's just no two ways about it that the 630 Plus comfortably beats it in performance, hands down. But just to restate what I covered before, it's not just about performance. It's also the fact that AR is seemingly matching Kranzel's build quality with long life, low revving motors, premium brass pumps, ceramic plungers, all made in-house in Italy, and backing it with long warranties and building a great after-sales surface and parts infrastructure. After having the AR680 in the shop for almost 3 years now with daily use and without a single hiccup, has proven to me that the brand delivers on not only performance, but also reliability and longevity. And let me be clear that in that environment, having used or owned many pressure washers from Karchers to Gurneys, Stihl, Ryobi, Bosch, and many other less known brands, none of them would have survived. So let's talk a little more about the AR680, which if you've seen any of my detailing vlogs at work over the past couple of years, you would have seen it in action. I was planning on showing you guys both the 680 and 591 Plus in action for this video, but due to circumstance in my schedule, that unfortunately didn't happen. So you'll just have to watch a little more of the 630 Plus in action while I discuss those other units. Now, before the sample of the AR630 Plus arrived earlier this year, I think I would have quite comfortably chosen the 680 to replace my Kranzel at home, so I do really like this unit. The flow and pressure is on point, and it's hard to fault, especially at its very reasonable price. But if I'm being honest, it's almost neither here or there, especially with the introduction of not only the 630 Plus, but also the new AR591 Plus. So let me explain what I mean. To me, more so based on first-hand use performance rather than specs, the AR680, which costs about 1100 AUD, really does sit smack bang in the middle of the Kranzel KHD7 and the 2160 in terms of how well it performs. So I do still feel it's gonna outshine the baby Kranzel in the real world, but it's not quite a 2160 if I'm being honest. So very solid, more than capable, but for an extra 400 Aussie dollars or so, you could get the 630 Plus. That's not only a performance upgrade, but with its longer life motor and pump, could very well be a long life purchase even for a pro detailer. Whereas I'd say the 680 may be more like a solid 5 to 10 year unit, but understand that I'm just guessing here and that's going to depend on a lot of factors. Also important to mention is that although you can still run the 680 on a 240 volt 10 amp outlet and it still works fine, in order to achieve the 680's max PSI and water flow performance, it does need to be used with a 15 amp outlet, whereas the newer 630 Plus and 591 Plus models will do so on 10 amps. Now what makes this even more tricky is the new AR591 Plus that not only on paper is very closely matched to the AR680, but by also using both units in the shop side by side, there's honestly not a lot between them, and the fact that the 591 Plus is about 750 AUD makes the choice even harder. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that I was very surprised at how well the new 591 Plus performed, honestly better than I expected, and once again I'd say comfortably outperformed the Kranzel KHD7, but was even more so surprised that it almost matched the 680, which I certainly wasn't expecting. So that's what I meant when I said that the AR680 seems to be now a little overshadowed by not only its bigger 630 Plus brother, but potentially also by its little 591 Plus brother. So I don't know if AR hurt themselves a little by making the new 591 Plus maybe a bit too good, but I have to say I really like this unit, and for the price I don't think there's even a relatively close competitor that can match its 8 to 9 litre per minute water flow or 1200 psi with a full brass pump, stainless steel pistons including a 3-year warranty, not to mention a true total stop system. To me this unit surprised me the most, and I think at the price it's pretty amazing. So let's wrap up this video. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to recommend a good budget-friendly pressure washer, and my answer has always been it just doesn't exist. One thing I learned early in my detailing career is that there's a few bits of equipment that you just can't skimp on if your goal is to have high performance, reliability, and a long-lasting unit. Vacuum cleaners, steamers, extractors, and pressure washers, to name a few. So with pressure washers, there's a few things to consider. First and foremost is a brass pump. Stay away from aluminium and plastic component pumps as they break and break quickly. And be wary of units that don't explicitly state full brass pump, as throwing in a little brass with an alloy pump to help with marketing is no better and just deceiving. Secondly, don't get caught up on specs, as for the most part they are misleading as it relates to what you're actually going to experience in terms of real use performance. Reviews of third-party independent tests are best, and always prioritize water flow over PSI. That is a far less important factor. Thirdly, there's a reason you see pro detailers using loads of Kranzels, and in more recent years, just like myself, using AR pressure washers. We've used almost every pressure washer brand in the past, learnt from our mistakes, and although it does hurt laying down more money, it only hurts once rather than the pain of 1,000 small cuts day in, day out. Fourthly, don't disregard the difficulty and benefit of producing seriously high performing pressure washers that don't require 15 or 20 amp outlets. It's actually very impressive to see both Kranzel and AR doing this, where many other washers in this level of performance will require more amperage. Fifthly, weight matters. Brass pumps, quality motors, steel and heavy duty chassis and housing all add up. And in my experience, if your pressure washer is around the 20 kilogram mark or more, that's never a good sign. Lastly, you just have to accept that the vast majority of pressure washers are basically random parts and molds sourced and assembled separately to save cost. So when a brand does do start to finish in-house production, there's a level of quality control that once again shouldn't be disregarded. And that's also why they tend to offer longer warranties, better after-service parts and support that you will greater appreciate not if, but when something goes wrong. So add up all these little points, and what you have here is a good guide in selecting a great pressure washer unit. The catch is it will cost more in the short term, but more than likely cost less over the long term. I just don't think you can go all that wrong choosing any three of these pressure washers, which is why I chose them for this video. But my overall conclusion will be that if you do want amazing value at the high end of the car pressure washer spectrum, the new AR630 Plus is just so good, it's hard to beat. Now, if you want the larger Krenzel, you'll also be getting a fantastic unit, but at more than twice the price, the value of the brand may not be what it used to, especially now with more options available. If your budget is more restricted but you still want a fantastic unit, honestly, the new AR591 Plus really isn't much of a compromise at all. So don't be fooled by its lower price tag, as this could easily be a far more expensive unit for what you get, and I'd say it eats baby Krenzels for breakfast. To me, the AR680 is a good unit if you're specifically looking for a great performing bare unit that you can wall mount and modify, ideally run on a 240 volt 15 amp outlet, but don't want to pay the few extra hundred for the 630 Plus. So once again, it is a great unit, but it's now got a bit of a middle child syndrome, where I almost think you could save yourself a little money and get the 591 Plus that's close to par build quality and performance wise, or spend a little more and get a more significant upgrade in the 630 Plus that could be a long life unit. I think I'll leave it there, guys, and I hope you enjoyed and found this video helpful. I pray you all open your hearts up to Christ. May God bless each and every one of you. Stay strong, stay faithful, and I'll see you next time.